stormwater management ordinances that are on here, so I'm gonna give the floor to you, sir, and you can go away.
Okay, sure, thank you. And I'm sure that I would like to chat a little bit about chapter 920 and 923 that are here before us tonight. So I jotted down a few notes here the other day as I was thinking about it.
Yeah, that's,
I
I don't want to take the mayor's chair, that's a little awkward else.
You want to take my chair?
No,
I don't
believe me,
like,
yes.
no, we have a chair here, this is an extra. And hopefully it's not the short one.
Well, we'll find
I'm
out.
supposed to have the short one.
This one's comfortable.
So there you go.
Try. This is
So,
Yes.
yeah, in short here,
back girl.
the revised ordinances here that we've got in front of us.
Yeah, one's a new one and then.
Well, yeah, one is a new one, a brand new one, the other one is a revision of an existing ordinance. These updates or adding a new ordinance basically are a requirement of the Ohio EPA. So, in short, we don't really have a whole lot of choice. Every city and every village in the region, in the state for that matter, is required to update their ordinances to meet these minimum Ohio EPA requirements. And to give you a brief little bit of history, what has happened is the local watershed groups, there's the Tinker's Creek Watershed Group, Chagrin River, Rocky River, Mill Creek, they all have their watershed groups. The representatives from those groups have all come together to craft this language, and they've done that for two reasons. First of all, to make sure that it's acceptable to the Ohio EPA, which it is, and also to get all of the communities in the region some uniformity, get them in line with each other so that all of the communities are enforcing and playing by the same rules as far as stormwater management is concerned. So we as Macedonia, we are not requiring any more or any less than any other community anywhere in the area, which I think is good. We're right in line with everybody else.
So if we looked at ours, it used to be the Tinker Creek, and we invited Tinker Creek, I think, once when they had their stormwater. When I would look at Twinsburg's, it would be in line with ours, which would also be in line with Boston Heights, because they were at our table. And then we had some people north to see what they were doing. So you're saying everything should be pretty much
Yes,
the same.
with some minor exceptions, everybody's language is very, very similar. And some communities may even have the exact same language. I don't know, but it's all very similar, all in line with each other, which I think is good. Have some uniformity to how the region is going to manage stormwater. And as some of you may know, Chagrin Valley, we are the engineers for 17 communities. 10 of those communities already have passed this ordinance with this updated language. And some of the communities that haven't done it yet are currently considering it just the same as we are. So we're not alone. Everybody is taking that step forward. And I guess the last thing I would point out too, the nice thing about having these ordinances updated or added, as is the case with 920, is it puts us in a good position. It gives some clear direction to a potential land developer as to exactly what we require for stormwater management. And in the rare case in which a developer or his design engineer tried to fight us or argue with us or challenge us on anything, we need we don't have to look any further than our own ordinance. Here you go, chapter 920. We can quote right from it. This is what is required. There's no gray area, there's no questions. We have solid footing to enforce what
Does
we need to
Northville
enforce.
and the center have the same thing, since we have the jet?
Well-
And when it was first developed, we had the issue with the mound, the water.
I'm not
You
sure
mean
that
Northfield Center.
the county would have probably had to
The
pass.
county did that.
Yeah,
one.
that's what I was going to say. Northfield
So
Center.
they have to live under,
The county.
it would be, okay.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
because we share and there's water issues over there.
Exactly. Townships are a little different. They're not an MS4, and I won't get into all the details of it, but
Yeah.
they're not subject to this. But Northfield Center and Sagamore do use Summit County as their engineer, so those communities are subject to the Summit County Stormwater Management Manual, which
Yeah.
I've seen before, and it's industry standard type stuff. very similar to the ordinances that we have here before
When
us.
when GPD was here in 2009, Kelly Ludke submitted a response for stormwater to actually Summit County, which forwarded it to the state EPA. And that's the last plan that I've seen. I went out on their website to look. I do have some questions now, Joe, if you're done.
Yeah, I think that's really about all that I had to say.
Okay.
I mean, naturally, I would recommend that we, adopt these ordinances, and
Sure.
certainly if there's any questions about what's contained in them, I'd be
Right.
more than happy to chat
Let me
about
ask
it.
before she gets into specifics, what happens if we don't adopt them?
Well, I don't know. I'm not aware of anybody that is
They won't
not
be shooting
planning
us?
on adopting it, but I'm sure that the Ohio EPA would have legal
There are penalties?
recourse or some type of penalty
Well,
with us.
They-
Normally
If
it's
it
funding
got to
cuts.
that far, which I
Well,
don't anticipate it
back to
would, but.
Well, that's
Right.
a fair question though, because.
Yes,
if
yeah,
we make
yes,
it-
I think the first thing would happen is we would not be able to apply for or accept any funding
Okay.
Hey, here's-
from the EPA, and there could be additional recourse, I don't know.
Thank you.
I have some questions now, if somebody else has something to go here. In the ordinance number 16, which is the 920, it refers to, it says, any sections of codified ordinance in conflict herewith. This is on page 2 in section 1.
Got it?
And are hereby and herein repealed and amended accordingly. All other provisions of the city's codified ordinance is not inconsistent. So do we have a list of what we are going to repeal?
Oh, you're in section 2, I apologize.
Yes, I'm sorry, I did say section 1.
It's okay. In conflict herewith and here are repealed, all other provisions of the city's.
Yeah, so what is
Yeah,
that?
I would think, and Mark's not here, but I would think that
Well-
any sections of the codified ordinance in conflict, there probably aren't any because 920 is a new chapter, not a
Well-
replacement of an old.
If you don't know, that's fine, we'll just talk, ask Mark. But
Yeah.
let's go to the next question I have, which is, basically, I went out to see a couple things. Since there's reference to this NPDES that's out there from the National EPA, and the attempt to adopt it inside of the state of Ohio by the state of Ohio issuing what they call guidance, ended up with, in the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio, and there's was a decision about 2 years ago that in Fairfield County versus Nally, that said that the Ohio EPA cannot issue guidance for the total max daily load or any of these pollutants.
Okay.
Because they had to go through what's called rulemaking, because it involves actually actionable work that you could be sued. So what I'm wondering is, has this been considered in what we have in here or not? And if you don't know the answer, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest with you. I mean, I'm not familiar with that particular case, so I don't know.
Well, I brought with me, I just printed off a couple
Wouldn't you
things.
think, though, this was done with the guidance of the law department? True.
Well,
Okay.
it may be that
But
they'll
they
have
would
something
be
to say.
aware. And are these recommendations from the EPA
Pretty much.
to adopt? No, no.
Well, I think that the requirement from the EPA is that we update
Something.
or, in
Okay.
case
We
of
have some kind of
920,
plan.
add,
Didn't EPA cross these?
I'm sorry?
Didn't EPA write these? Our law department.
EPA didn't actually write it. They simply mandate that you need to update your ordinances to meet some minimum requirements. They don't actually give you the language. That's where the local watershed groups had to come into play, band together, craft the language, then turn to the EPA and say, this is what we've crafted. Does it meet your minimum requirements, what you'd like to see? And then after some amount of time, the EPA says, yes.
So the basic purpose is to protect the water systems of your community as well as those who are operating in watersheds that impact our communities. So you're working together as partners.
I think that's a true statement.
Right, I'm sure that's true. The next question I have, and with regard to this whole plan, I went through it trying to get the picture. Now, on the attachment, and let's go to C, which is on page 2CG. Attachment, do you have that?
Uh-huh.
And then.
Oh, mine is
might be
ever so
slightly off.
slightly different, okay.
Okay,
You're in G, you're in 920.01G.
correct.
Okay, got it.
And it says the regulation does not apply to construction or reconstruction of standalone single-family dwellings when the parcel is not part of an overall subdivision or is part of a subdivision that is in existence as of the adoption of this ordinance unless otherwise required by the city engineer.
Yeah, I think what that's getting at is two things. Somebody could buy half an acre of land on an old street
Well, they can,
and build a little home, and, you know, if somebody's building a home on a half an acre of land, they don't have to build a big detention pond.
well,
They're
right,
not subject to all of this. And then the second part,
yeah.
or when the parcel is not part of, or is part of a subdivision that is in existence. In other
Right.
words, if there's a subdivision that was originally built 20 years ago, and for some
Right.
reason there's one lot left over,
Well, but it
the
could
new
mean,
lot is not subject to the new rules, he's subject to the old rules.
right, well, it sounds like if a subdivision exists as of the adoption, it really isn't covered by this ordinance. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Since most of Macedonia is built out,
Mhm.
you know, pretty much so.
Most of it.
And we do have, obviously, we do have stormwater problems in those subdivisions everywhere. But it sounds like this doesn't really necessarily apply to them. And we, you know, like, for example, there have been requirements placed by the planning commission on these subdivisions. And some of it relates to stormwater. So is that radically different than what we're seeing here, Joe, or is there something else?
No, I don't think there's anything radically different, and I think that, I think the idea here with this paragraph that we're looking at is that old pieces of property or old developments are, I guess you could think of them as grandfathered into whatever the requirements were at the time that those subdivisions were built.
Yes.
And I think that the idea here is these ordinances don't necessarily solve old problems that we have. It prevents new problems
Well, I get that.
from creating.
I get
The
that.
other thing though in G does state, unless otherwise required by the city engineer, so you are
Sure.
grandfathered, but if you find that someone's gonna come in that built something that totally impacts the
Well,
water
here's the
flow, the
problem.
city engineer
Yeah.
has the right to deny it.
Right, here's the problem,
Yeah,
though.
So
If somebody wants to come in and develop 10 acres of land, then, hey,
Yeah,
you're
let's-
subject to the new rules. Yeah.
Well, let's
Or
put
somebody
it
builds
this
right
way.
along Indian Creek,
Well,
that
this,
then encroaches into the creek.
okay,
They would be subject to riparian setback also,
Right.
which is
Right.
currently in the
Okay.
code.
right, which is currently there, right.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, though, there's a lot of discretion throughout here about the city engineer can say, even though it says this, you may not be. I'm just wondering how that, to me, that leads to a question of, just that language there leads to a question of, am I an already existing subdivision, and do I, you know, what is my impact? Am I under the old rules or the new rules, which leads to situations where we have lawsuits. But
We have what?
we have lawsuits when people are disputing language or the cost of things, which brings me to the next question, which is, do we have a sense of, is this an additive cost to the residents and businesses who are impacted, and that has to be clear what they are? Or, you know, do we know that there's any kind of cost impacts and what those are? And I guess a bigger picture question was, how does the planning commission fit into this in terms of what's their authority versus the authority of the city engineer? It sounds like, in the past, at least when I sat in the planning commission, that the planning commission determines basically that the engineer is going to, they get a recommendation from the engineer, but they are going to determine what's actually going to be set forth in the requirements. So how does that work?
Well, I mean, I would say typically if a land developer were to apply and approach the planning commission,
Yeah.
he would have a plan,
Right.
which I would review, and I think the planning commission would rely on me for a recommendation.
Right.
You know,
They
how
would.
many acres is this? Are they subject to these new terms? That type of thing.
Right, I think that would be true. I'm just, because of the language in some of these places, it sounds like the city engineer has authority that's over and above the planning commission. Now, that may not be the case, but it sounds like it. So I'd like to have that clarified. Also, just the overall structure of this and how this works together. And again, the Supreme Court ruling, basically, you know, they had this picture of the total maximum daily load thing, and
Okay.
they had agreements through a whole bunch of places, just
Sure.
like you described. And then this got overridden by their Supreme Court decision, because they have to go back and create quote-unquote rulemaking processes to make sure, because the reason for that is very simple. The rulemaking process goes through a certain number of steps to determine all the impacts and who is impacted by all these regulations in place and what is the financial burden and all that kind of stuff. And so I was looking actually to see if there had been an update to this. Every place I looked, they still talked about this ruling in 2015 by the Supreme Court. So I don't know how much of the details here, which I think we're probably back to what you described as some agreement among these parties, are actually enforceable at this point, is my question. And so those are the things that I thought were of some concern when I read this, and reviewed it and tried to figure out what all this stuff fits together. So that's my first concern, and that's on 920. On 923, it does refer to this, you know, the
Maximum
TMDL.
daily load.
Yeah, and it talks about the various, well, what they're talking about is stormwater can go over properties that have too much of one thing or another in it. You know, they could have things sitting outside, or that would create what is called a pollutant, because it's simply sitting there and the water goes over it. And since we have water in Macedonia going over everything.
Unfortunately.
Yes, and it's all coming downhill to certain places. We kind of have to know how far this is enforceable.
Well, okay, go ahead.
And so that was the one thing that I thought here. The other thing is, again, they're referring to codified ordinance and conflict are herewith and hereby repealed. And again, we don't have a list of those, so I'd like to know what those are. And then it does talk in this one about the regulation applies to all parcels used or being developed, either wholly or partially, for new or relocated projects involving highways, underground cables, all that. And then they say, or building or residential projects. So it sounds like to me, this one, the erosion and sediment control, is impacting existing properties, and that the NPDES system is now going to be in place. But there's a lot of city engineer discretion in here about, you know, what the city engineer can do and all that. So,
Well,
like,
that should be, because your local city engineer would be the one that's most familiar with. And we've had in the past where the engineers actually called in the Army Corps of Engineers.
well, I know
Now,
that.
I'll go back and use the property at the Commons, I know I'm repeating myself. But with the water and the issues with the mounding and the sediment that was coming out, we had the Army Corps of Engineers. Take the other example, if someone wants to take wetlands. You've got a sediment issue, so the engineer has always had that discretion.
Well, they have discretion, but
always
enforcement
have, though.
capability is, and how much discretion they have versus the planning commissions authority is something that,
I don't think
Yeah,
this
well-
changes any of that.
well, I don't know. Based on the language, I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I don't think that it changes any of it. Remember, in the current Chapter 923 and the new Chapter 923,
Uh-huh.
and also in the new Chapter 920, to your
Uh-huh.
point about wetlands,
Yes.
or stream impacts as well, if there are to be wetland or stream impacts, the applicant or the land developer is required to show us proof of compliance with the Ohio EPA or the Army Corps, whatever the case may
Right,
be. So
right.
we
There are
put
some
that,
specific wetland
that
issues.
permitting
Right.
on the applicant to take it up with either the Ohio
Well,
EPA
and they
or the
should. I
Army
mean, it's
Corps.
not like
Yeah.
they shouldn't be required to do that, because we do have a lot of wetlands in Macedonia, and there are issues with, as we know, all these developments that have occurred uphill have been affecting everybody downhill. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that.
So your questions are what?
Well, I thought I already
The
asked
biggest question, I
them.
think, as you're saying is, does this make the engineer overrules the planning commission?
Well, that's one, okay.
Okay,
And-
and Mark's not here yet. I'm just trying to summarize,
Well,
because that's the question that's
Can you
come
give
up a
us
couple
a
times.
real world application of how these would be, like, I'm
Sure.
kind of lost, like, why do we even need these rules?
Sure.
Give me an example of where.
Good question. Chapter 923, erosion and sediment control. I guess the next big ticket item, so to speak, that's on the horizon is the Northwood subdivision behind Faith Fellowship Church, Petros development.
The first phase of that has been approved, right? in a general
Correct.
sense.
Yeah, so, here they are, they sit up on the hill, and when they get in there and start working, they're gonna disturb
Yes.
a lot of earth.
They are.
And there's a lot of people downhill of them that are sort of in the bullseye or in the crosshairs. And, this chapter provides some requirements, really some protection for those people downhill. So I think that would be
Okay.
a real-world application where this would come into play, and one that's on the not-too-distant horizon for us as a city.
What if I have someone, because I'm at the 3/4 of the way up the hill, someone on my street decides to put an addition on, which is half up?
Mhm.
Is that also looked at because we impact the flow of water downstream? Does it include renovations?
If they do an addition to, well, if they do a separate standalone building, of course, they have to come to the planning commission, and that's one thing we always take a look at.
Right.
Hey, where do the roof drains go? Are you gonna adversely impact any neighbors?
Right.
Now, if they're simply doing an addition to an existing house, they typically don't come before the planning commission, so I think the answer to that
But
question
they have to
is.
get permits.
Well, they have to get a permit, and if they are doing an addition to an existing house, they probably are tying the roof drains and footer drains
It
into the
appears that-
existing connection, wherever that connection
But
may
is
go.
that covered then by the permits, so people are actually, I mean, that's assuming people do that, but
Yeah, assuming they apply and get a permit, and they're not,
Well, according to 920,
Working out.
it doesn't sound like they're impacted by this stuff. Now, but they are impacted by just permit processing, I agree with that.
building department permit
Yeah, the
process.
building department has to approve, an addition on the home. But again, it's certainly not,
Yeah, and,
this.
and to your question, an addition on a home typically would be much less than an acre of disturbed land, so
And
yes,
the other reason I
not
bring
normally
up-
subject to all of
Well,
this.
the other reason I bring up my street is the entire, from Shepherd down
Mhm.
to almost, it's a Longbrook, Longwood. We bought a 1/4 acre in the back.
Okay.
That abuts Guadalupe. People could actually build on that. And because it's at the top of the ridge, I mean, it's a viable, or on Ledge Road, people could build, which would impact down. So I'm just trying to see how that impacts. Because we still have some buildable property, but we also have ability to add on or alter or change
Mhm.
the flow of water based on current properties.
Sure. And I think that if someone were to propose a home in an area like you're describing, which is an older subdivision, mostly or all the way built out, I think one thing we would certainly look at as part of the site plan is where are you discharging your stormwater?
Okay.
Is it gonna adversely impact somebody downstream of you? And if the answer is yes, we need to figure out a way to mitigate that impact.
So if Guadalupe ever followed through with their build of the school, remember for years they talked about a school.
Okay.
If they ever did that, that would be a big impact.
They're
because-
certainly subject to all of this,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
Well,
building a
essentially,
school, absolutely.
What this is doing is it's improving upon what we already have existing, correct?
Mhm,
Is
that's
there any
correct.
unintended consequences that you have seen or anything in there that you would find to be alarming?
I can't think of anything that would be an unintended consequence towards us as a city. I mean, it's only beneficial to have these ordinances to stand on.
And
As
if
well.
I understand Sylvia's questions, she's questioning the authority, is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm saying that
ultimate
as far as
decision.
I can see, some of the language in here that is being used is still not an approved set of standards by the Ohio EPA, because the Ohio EPA has been ordered to go and create a rulemaking process for every one of these regulations related to the TMDL. That's what I'm saying. And it appears, and again, Mark isn't here, so I don't know whether that is, if there's been any additional thought. I've just been able to scan on the internet and pull down things from a number of these attorney firms that
He's not
handle
here
this
yet.
kind of thing.
Mayor.
But the question I have is, I think our main stormwater issues are probably related to what's already happened.
They're old problems.
They're old problems, they're not new ones, and the
Agreed.
concern I have is, there's a lot of money going into developing all this, I would say, just looking at it. And is it the best use of our resources, or is there some other process? Now, we may have to do this, could be perfectly right. I don't know that without
But
understanding.
if it's mandated by the EPA.
Well,
and it's
but
already
they can't-
written,
yeah,
there
I
isn't
know.
any more money being spent.
Well,
It
they
was the
can't.
legislation created.
Yeah, what they're saying in this, all these commentaries from the 2015 decision is, the EPA can go ahead and implement these rules, they just can't implement them the way they originally tried, which as guidance. They have to go through rulemaking, which means there's all this regulation
So we're saying that every
review.
community that's adopting this is wrong.
No, I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm saying that there is an impact of those decisions that might, in our case, make it less valuable than,
What is the downfall
well,
if we pass it and we adopt it and we follow the EPA
Right.
rules and we follow the surrounding communities are doing the same thing,
okay.
as well as all of the organizations that are told they have to do something by the EPA.
Right.
What if we don't do it? Do we get fined? Do we get penalized?
I'm sure at some point, yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's not
based
imminent,
on
but at
this,
some point,
right,
it could
based
come
on
to
this,
that.
it's hard to tell exactly
Well,
without some more input on exactly what they can and cannot do.
but he's the engineer. For how many cities did you say you drew this up for? I would think he
Uh,
would know.
yeah, 17.
Thank you.
Have any other communities balked with this? Has there been any other prudent questions that you would think would be
None that I'm
relevant?
aware of, and it seems that in the communities that have adopted it so far, they've done so without any questions that have changed the language in the document. I mean, I'm sure they've had a discussion like this, but
So I would assume they all went through their engineering and their law department to make these happen.
that would be correct.
And they're all amendable. They said that right. If things
Amendable.
change, they're amendable.
I would think
Not
they'd have to
amenable.
be amendable because these regulations change. I think there's a lot of, if you look at this, there's a lot of development of plan, and which is an expense, it's part of the process. It may be necessary, given the amount of build out in Macedonia. I think there's a harder question about how much we have to do all of these things relative to the other things we should be doing, which is, for example, that whole Guadalupe thing is a mess, and we will have to do something about it because of the way it was put into
But
place.
what money are we spending by adopting this?
Well, obviously, we've got the training plan that has to be as part of the series of events here. We have to join with Summit County in this training plan. And
Cost
then,
of that.
And how
yeah,
much is that?
That's
That
a net
was-
zero for us as a city.
no, it's, they said they're gonna charge us around 14,000.
Would it even go?
No.
Well, it's in the ordinance, let's put it that way.
Where in the ordinance? does it
Here's,
say
and
on
I guess we'll switch gears and we'll talk about the agreement with Summit Soil and Water.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
Yeah, in short, there's 6 minimum control measures that we have to do as a city.
And one of them is to train on this whole issue.
Yeah, one of them is to train, and 2 of them involve a public interaction.
Right.
And for those 3 measures, that's where Summit Soil and Water comes into play to provide us with those services. And what happens is we make a payment to Summit Soil and Water for those services. However, it's a triangular agreement. We make the payment to Summit Soil and Water, then NERSD reimburses us for that exact same amount of money.
Okay, and that's not coming out of our
Does
community
not come out of our
share.
community
Okay, no
costs.
problem.
So a net zero for us as a
Okay, got it. That's fine. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
there's
I
no
do agree,
cost.
yes, yes.
So we don't
I
have
was
to worry
gonna
about
say,
it.
if there was a cost, I gotta tell you guys, if we don't adopt these, you may say we're built out, but every day we get a storm that changes the flow of the water in here, or the sediment, or the runoff, or.
And, well,
I
that's
agree,
true.
but that's not impacted by this stuff here.
And these
Yes,
ordinances.
it is. Soil and Water is talking about conservation, Summit Soil Regional Sewer
Right.
District, implementing conservation measures.
I understand that.
That's
But-
every day of the year. That's
Right.
not historical.
Well, what I'm saying is, the things that would bring this into effect and require people to make changes to their property are the things that they're saying we don't have to do.
And to both of your guys' point, these chapters 920 and 923 would also apply to redevelopment of a large parcel, like
Of a
Bedford
large-
anodizing.
Yeah, well,
or
yeah.
those types
It
of
says,
things.
it says it doesn't involve, parcels not, does not apply to construction or reconstruction, et cetera. So I don't know. Mark, are you, we were talking, and I had some questions about, I started with 920, and in the ordinance itself, Mark, it says that, this is in section 2, on page 2, under the ordinance 16. Are you following where I'm at?
Yeah,
Okay.
under definitions you're talking about.
No,
no.
Mark, she's in 920.01G.
Okay.
Actually, no, that's one of the places I
Oh, I'm
went.
sorry.
But this one is, here, I'll just show it to you. This is in the ordinance itself,
Yeah,
and it's in section 2.
yeah.
Okay. It says, any sections of the codified ordinance in conflict of herewith and hereby are herein repealed. Do we have a list of what's repealed?
No, that's the standard language you have where we insert in legislation that
so-
provides an amendment for any of our ordinances.
Okay, so you.
So that's a matter of, you put that in there as a matter of interpretation if there's subsequently a conflict or an apparent conflict.
In the sense that we have something else that says something else?
Correct.
So, but we
So-
don't know of anything at this point that says something else.
So let's say you pass an ordinance officially designating the sky as green in the area over City Hall. And you didn't realize that you had another ordinance saying that, well, the sky throughout the entire city is designated as blue. Okay? The subsequently passed ordinance controls because of this language.
Okay, well, but we don't know of anything that would be repealed by this at this point? You have not seen anything? Or
Nothing I can
in your
recall off the
review,
top of my head.
you didn't find anything? Okay. And the language in the actual 920, let me get to the right place, that's what he is referring to.
One of the questions she had is with the language, that the way it's written, does the engineer then overrule the planning commission?
Does the what?
Engineer's decisions, because it said that the engineer has the ability
Yeah, they
to,
have-
where it's grandfathered.
Right, I believe the way the ordinance is drafted provides the engineer with discretion over these matters.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, to that point,
I think
the
that's.
planning commission usually is considering more general applications. The more detailed conformance to these requirements typically is handled administratively with the review
Right.
by the engineer.
Right.
The technical
But-
Yeah,
review,
this isn't
correct. The planning commission wouldn't
authority or anything.
review
No, it's
for.
the
But this
aesthetic
is-
and how many parking
this
spaces,
is-
because I've been on the planning commission.
You got it,
At
yeah.
times, we didn't
You've been
get down
there
to that
before.
nitty-gritty.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
the
you normally
difference,
wouldn't.
the difference here is that it wouldn't be a question of whether something is going to be regulated or not, which is in this ordinance, when he could decide that even though it generally it doesn't apply, it applies in this case. That's the way the language reads. And so it would be not as a result of the planning commission doing anything, but as a result of his own discretion as to whether something ought to be done. That's what
I
it
mean,
looks like.
Speaking in generalities, it's kind of hard to
Well,
follow you, but the simple
No.
explanation is you just follow the code as drafted. I mean, it's pretty clear.
well, what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about whether the code is clear or not. I think it's clear. The question is, what authority are you giving to the engineer as opposed to what the planning commission normally has, which is to determine whether something really applies to this situation?
It's the authority given under this code section.
Right, I understand it.
So give me an example of what you're referring to, because speaking in generalities, I can't give you an answer.
Okay, well, I think you've just given me the answer. That is that in
Let's
this.
give you an example. So the guy comes in and he wants to build a new piece of property. The planning commission looks at aesthetics, they look at parking, they look at the ability for fire to have egress and entrance. They look at the height of the building, they look at the color of the building, they look at the size of the building.
Right.
And they say, this all fits the parameters that we have. The engineer then says, yeah, but it doesn't fit the riparian waterway.
Right.
And therefore, you've got to move it back so many feet, which may mean you have to alter your whole plan. Does the engineer have the ability to say to the planning commission, your approval is dependent upon meeting this legislation to make sure that we take care of the
Yeah.
soil, water, and conservation?
Correct. That's correct.
So when it says here that, and this is in.
That happens, it's a Lake Forest problem right there, what you just described.
The 920.01
Close to the area and water
CG.
stuff.
We have that in Park West.
Okay.
Okay.
It's talking about what it doesn't apply to. And there's a number of things it doesn't apply to, which is a lot of what's in Macedonia right now.
Right.
But unless otherwise required by the city engineer. So in essence, what you're saying here is the city engineer can say, even though you're covered.
Yes, there's some discretion the city engineer can
Right, so
exercise
he's
if-
getting.
if appropriate
but-
under the circumstances.
Right, you're saying that that's what they're doing. I'm saying that that's giving authority to the engineer that's over and above what exists now. That's what-
The engineer is always providing technical guidance.
Well, I
on
know
these
he's
kind of
providing
issues,
guidance.
So, no,
This
I
is-
don't think so, but.
He's providing guidance, but he's actually making a determination about
But the
whether or
planning
not this
commission
applies.
traditionally,
Okay,
and
well,
after
I'm
being on the
just
planning
making a point.
commission, traditionally listens to the engineer because of their
Well, I
expertise.
understand that.
As well as the fire inspector, as well as there's multiple people. Is there, to her point, is there any legislation that defines the roles of the planning commission versus the engineer?
Well, sure, I mean, you have the charter and the general duties and obligations set forth there.
Right.
But I don't think it anywhere says
doesn't
they
get
are
to
the
this
final
level of
say and the
detail, no.
engineer has no, okay.
Now, the question, if I may, I brought up this earlier because there was a Supreme Court decision concerning these total maximum daily loads that were attempted to be applied through these various agreements that had taken place, built out with various watershed groups. And I think you probably know about this, the Fairfield County versus.
I mean, I know of it, I haven't read it in the last couple
Okay,
weeks.
well, well,
Or a week.
I can't say that I read the whole decision, I just read the summary in some of these pages. And it's basically saying that the Supreme Court said to the Ohio EPA, is you cannot have enforceable regulations like this without going through a rulemaking process.
I mean, are you asking me to give an opinion on the US Supreme Court decision and how it applies to this ordinance?
Well,
I can't
no,
give you
no,
an
not the
off-the-cuff
Supreme, not the
answer.
US Supreme Court, I'm talking about the Ohio Supreme Court.
Okay.
And there was a decision in 2015, in March, that said this was a challenge that was brought to these types of regulations that were called guidance by the Ohio EPA. And the Ohio Supreme Court says, no, you can't have an enforceable regulation like this unless you go through the rulemaking process. That's what it says. So all of these agreements that were put into place through these watersheds, which was the original plan, then had to go through rulemaking. And what I want to know is what has happened since then. Should we be placing this kind of regulation into place, or is it challengeable?
Well, if you want an opinion, I can do some research and give you one.
Yes, I do.
If council would like that.
Well,
But
I'm asking you.
I can certainly tell you that other communities have enacted this almost
I
exact
understand.
same set of measures. It hasn't been challenged, it's not subject to challenge as far as I know.
Well,
I'm not aware
please
of any
check into
case
it.
law that would call
Well-
into question our ability to enact this ordinance.
Well, we can enact it. I'm not saying we can't enact it.
And it subsequently be challenged.
Yes.
I'm not aware of it.
Well,
But you can challenge anything at any
Yeah,
time.
of course.
but no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is specifically been an Ohio Supreme Court decision, and I'm asking you.
But then why would
How-
any community be adopting this based on
Well-
EPA's asking them to do it
And
based on?
And I can
I'm
say
not-
there's been many, many professionals that have collaborated on this and recommended this.
Right.
And there's been a lot of eyes on it.
Okay, I'm just asking you a very specific question, so please find out, so I can.
But was it based on one case when, I mean?
Well, he says he knows about the
One
case.
incident, not a generic too.
Right, he says he knows about it.
Well, Joe's description sounded to me like rulemaking, when you were talking about the EPA going back to the water. It sounded to me like you were describing a rulemaking process.
Yeah, I think that's what has happened between the EPA and
Right.
the local watershed.
I think
groups.
that they are doing that now. I'm just trying to find out whether that has been completed for this particular watershed, because originally was, and then it got thrown out. That's all.
All right, got about 15 minutes. We're going to move into the pending or new legislation. The first one is the appointment of Mr. Gelati to the engineer of the city. Is anyone opposed to a third reading on that?
I do have some amendments that I am going to suggest. I went back to the original ordinance that we had for GPD. And again, I would guess this was actually developed by our Deemer Associates. And there were a number of pieces of language in there that I think should be in this one. One, they did have a limit, which was, there was a 2-year limit on the contract, and then it was renewable. The second thing was that it refers specifically to the section 1401 of the charter confirming this a contract, because it says the council then authorizes and directs the mayor to enter into the contract for this period as attached. And one of the parts of the attachments, which I think is pretty important, is that it says in the miscellaneous section, let me find where that is, that it does describe the term of the agreement, and then it says the agreement is subject to annual appropriations by the council of the city. And I think you almost have to have that because it's open-ended unless you do.
What year was that from? I'm sorry.
This is 2008, the first GPD contract. If you want to look at it, you can look at it. But
Are you recommending that we put language in here that limits the contract?
Right.
That's your one recommendation?
yeah, I want to see
So we
us,
can make it a 4-year limit?
well, I think we should limit it to the period of the mayor's For
Well, be
example.
the mayor's recommendation. Mayor, what's your recommendation?
That's not my recommendation. We've never done that in the past. Why would we do it now?
Well, we have done it.
But that was not with
I
this
can
mayor.
tell you that I'm in all the years that I sat as a councilman and as a mayor of this city, that was never done. We appointed somebody because we wanted them, not with any
Well-
limitations. And at any given time, there was a clause in there to remove them if we didn't want them.
Yeah, but the reason that section 1401 is important here is that in section 1401 of the charter, it describes not only removal by the mayor, but removal by council. And in this particular document that we have at this point, it doesn't do that. It
But the
says,
charter, correct me
The
if I'm wrong, the
charter
charter
supersedes any
overrules
contract.
well,
legislation.
but I know, but that's what they're referring to it in what you guys constructed in a way.
But the charter says we have the authority to remove with the
Yeah, but you're
majority of
signing a-
council.
you're
The
signing a-
charter overrules, so you don't need to repeat it.
Well, they did repeat it in here because it's a
Well,
contract.
that doesn't mean it was right.
Well, Joe Deemer thought it
Well,
was
why don't
right.
we do this? We'll go third reading. Would you like to make the amendment on the floor, and you can speak to what you're offering?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we'll go second.
I would
and
rather
third.
go second reading and see what the amendment.
Okay, right. That's fine with me.
It's
It's
not
not a
fair
problem.
to, yeah, it's not fair to give an
Right,
amendment.
I can,
Can you email all of us your
I will.
suggestions, please?
I will.
Thank you.
Well,
But I think the mayor needs to be part of this. It's his employee.
well, yes, but it's all our
We
employees.
authorize the paycheck. It's his employee.
this contract that we're talking about, you're referring to the GPD contract. We drafted a new contract, which was with Chagrin Valley and Don Sheehy. We're now replacing Don Sheehy with Joe Gelati for less money, okay?
I'm not
And
arguing about the money.
so, I don't know what went wrong between 1 year ago, and that what needs to be all ramped, modified and what have you, but nothing has changed.
Well,
Are you looking for, basically fly shit and ashes, or what?
no, Joe, this is the kind of thing that makes it difficult, but I will do as you request. I will provide the recommended changes to the council members, and we can then proceed.
We also run those by the law department.
Well,
Some of them
I'll be happy to copy
Not
Mr.
necessary.
At the end of the day, it's an appointment by the mayor, confirmation by council, removal by the mayor and 3 members of council, or 4 members of council. Otherwise, the engineer continues in office.
Well, and in this particular contract, they had a limit on date, and I think it's a good idea to have a renewable situation. That's my opinion, but anyway, we'll see.
All right, so we'll move on to 15. This is the codified orders pertaining to peddlers and solicitors. Is anyone opposed to a third read on this? I think this is the one that brings us up to being legit and legal.
I thought we were gonna do, executive session.
If
It's
we
up to,
needed
it's up to.
It makes it so that it's complying with the laws, but if we need to have an executive, we can go second and have an
Let's
executive.
do that, because I didn't
Okay.
have any.
Or you can just.
We'll just
keep it
second
with,
read.
Actually, I had some questions too on that one. I was,
Do the executive session tonight?
We'll do it after the meeting.
I
Unless you
have a
guys want to wait.
I'm just unclear
I-
about some of the things that are in it.
we could either do it tonight, or we can do it, one more time. It doesn't really, it's not a crisis, I don't
Do we
think.
have to have this passed tonight, or are we okay?
We don't.
Okay.
So we can go second
we can
reading
even
and
do
go
a
on
third
hold.
reading.
Right, exactly, and we can have a chance to
So second
If
discuss
you'd like
it.
some more time to review, it, can do the executive.
I just want to
session.
talk to you about what we can and can't do.
Sure.
Okay. Moving on to 16, this is what we've been talking about, the comprehensive stormwater management. Are we prepared to move on these ordinances, or do we want to wait?
What
Personally,
is the timeline for us to have this before we are out of compliance?
For the comprehensive stormwater?
It's something we have to do, so the question is, if we
I
don't do
don't, I
it,
don't know that there's a set
timeline.
deadline.
why don't we hold it at second?
But I'm not sure,
So we'll go second. That's
there
fine.
hasn't been anything here
There's nothing
to
forced here.
change.
Yeah,
what's
I
in
don't,
here.
I don't
I would
think-
like to get some feedback from them on
On
this,
one issue, the
that one
only
issue.
issue is
You
the
know, what is the,
Supreme Court, which everybody
Right.
else has already.
I don't think there's any harm if we had 3 readings on
Okay.
We wait 2 more weeks. I don't think there's any harm to
and
us
then he
as a
can,
city.
yes, he can provide
Okay.
that.
So it'll be
Okay?
second for 17 and 18 as well.
Right.
Moving on to 19, I'll take this one. This is the appropriation for salaries and wages and other expenses of the city.
Let's first reading, right?
Yeah, this is the first
Sandy.
reading of the budget.
This is the budget, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is for Jan. Do the first read on that. And finally, resolution number 20. Kevin, will you take that one? It's for the appointment of Stacy Suji to Parks and Recreation Commission. Anyone opposed to a third read on that one?
You even know how to say the last name.
I have met her and knew her name.
Mr. Mueller, what about DT?
Chugi.
We're gonna go second
The MOU
read.
with Summit Soil and Water?
Second read.
Right.
And any other motions or legislative actions?
When is it gonna do the presentation of this?
Be in my mayor's report.
Tonight.
American,
It's just gonna be a basic giving it to us, and they're gonna come back at a later time, hopefully to do perhaps a
So we're gonna have a
Q&A or
chance.
whatever we can do. I think that would
At
be.
that time, should I probably sit with them?
No.
No.
No, you don't.
Okay. I wrote about half of it, so.
So, but you can sit right where you're at, and you don't have to abstain.
I could-
You're a part of this group, and, what you did there is, we want council to be able to digest it.
anything else, Mayor?
So you said abstain, are we gonna have to vote on this? That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's not something to vote on it, but I think what you're gonna do is you're gonna look at it and you're gonna say, well, you know, is this a good guide for us to use for the future? Is this something that is,
I think all council really does is accept it.
Receive it,
Yeah,
right.
receive it.
That's what I
Acknowledge
thought.
receipt, yeah.
We could acknowledge receipt of it tonight.
Yeah, let's just hold on. You know, it's not a big deal. We'll have a look at it first before we say
We'll acknowledge receipt and having read it.
it. Not having read it, right?
Okay. We have 5 minutes, right?
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Are we done? Okay.
The hour is 7:30, and this is a regular scheduled Macedonia council meeting. At this time, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bilkey.
Here.
Mr. Engel.
Here.
Ms. Hannikin.
Here.
Mr. Molnar.
Here.
And Ms. Teller.
Here.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to call on Tom O'Brien, American Legion Post 801 chaplain, and the city chaplain to lead us in prayer and then pledge allegiance. Please rise.
Gentlemen, please uncover, and with bowed heads, let us pray. Almighty God, hear our prayers as we gather this evening for our city council meeting. We ask for your guiding hands to aid our council members so that they may work together on the various programs and projects that are embraced by our community. Give our council members the transparency demanded by their constituency, and in return, allow the members of our community to show respect for their council members and our mayor so that they may perform their duties as required. We ask you, Almighty God, that you shower our blessings on all our city employees who work tirelessly to ensure that the work of the council and mayor is carried out in a timely and professional manner. Lastly, Almighty God, we ask that you embrace those members of our community who suffer from mental or physical illness, as well as those who suffer from financial hardship. Amen. And now, with hand over heart, please face the American flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaplain. Okay, at this time, I would ask for approval of our minutes of our regular meeting of December 12th, 2016, as well as our special meeting of January 24th, 2017.
Did I write 12?
You wrote the
Yeah,
12.
it's 8.
Did you?
8.
Okay.
It's mine.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting and the special meeting as presented by the
Second.
clerk.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's carried. Next item on the agenda is public comments. We only have a couple on here, but I just want to make an admonishment before we start that we are here to deal with city business. City business is obviously those things that affect how we deal with resident issues and other things that are going on in the city. So I am admonishing anyone who gets up, who wants to say something on a personal attack, against anyone here, that I'm going to ask for a point of order. If you don't follow my point of order, I will be asking our police chief over there to escort that individual from this room. So, with that, I'm going to call on our first person that would like to speak, and I would just ask that you come forth, come to the podium, and state your name and address, and we'll be happy to receive you, and that's Vince Ventura.
Good evening. I hope everybody's enjoying the weather this week. Vincent Ventura, I live at 1479 Bruce Road. I'll be a resident of the city as of May 2nd for 30 years. Okay, my kids grew up here from start to finish. First of all, I would like to congratulate and thank the majority of council in working together with the mayor and coming up with the plan for the May 2nd levy. After reading this proposal, it looks like a plan that is not only good for the city, but is good for the people, good for the residents. If you're not privy to this proposal, read last week's newsletter. The latest edition of the e-messenger also has a very good synopsis of what we're trying to get accomplished here. If you don't believe the residents are taking notice, read the editorial submitted by Melissa Gronke in this week's newsletter. Be informed. I am. Ms. Hannigan, we are only 8 weeks into 2017, and you've already voted no on just about every issue that's been brought up. What happened to cooperation and compromise? The levy will not have any additional effect on the residents. Ms. Hannigan, you've challenged the expertise and integrity of our finance director over and over again. You make her answer the same question 3 times, you just word it a little differently, and you take up much unneeded time. Rhonda Hall comes to us highly recommended. She has the experience and credentials to keep this city fiscally sound if given the opportunity. Far more than the finance director, previous finance director, Scott Schwab, that you supported and covered for. Be it known, he had no background in finances. He was a political science major. In 2016, you insulted the attending residents twice by calling us minions and again by telling us to shut up. So far in 2017, you have stated that you were smarter than the residents. You have also indirectly threatened a resident who voiced an opinion, which is her God-given right. When asked questions by other council members, you can't answer because you state, I'm not prepared to answer that, even though the questions are in reference to statements you've made or publications you've distributed or endorsed. Could this be because you don't pay attention or the fact that you fall asleep constantly? I have never in my life witnessed a potential employee being vetted in public. You have no business picking out individuals to admonish by bringing up personal histories and finances. You chose to attack only 2 members of 7 hires after the department heads and the mayor have already gone through that procedure for their intended positions. The procedure of council having to approve each individual hire is antiquated and should have been abolished long ago. I don't know any other city, village, township that does that. Ms. Hannigan, you made statements referring to the failure of the last 2 levies. It's been said by you that the people have spoken. Okay? What you need to do is stop campaigning against the city's needs. You've ran for mayor twice against 2 formidable candidates and lost. Doesn't that tell you that the people have spoken?
Okay, the next person to speak is George Plow.
There was no point of order there?
Well,
It's not.
he was talking about city business.
Well, he's not.
And if somebody's talking about something other than city business.
Well,
or-
He's talking in a number of ways.
And
that
you
are
could have asked for a
completely-
point of order.
Well,
I was gonna ask the same thing, Mayor, before I begin on my point. Does a point of order only apply to people that say things that you don't like, or does it apply to people that say anything against any member against?
Any one of the members of council here can say they would like a point of order. And if it's an issue that then council wants to then vote on, they have the ability to say, I agree that needs point of order, and we're gonna stop them right here. That's why you call for point of order. If you've read Robert's rules, then you would know that.
Thank you for that clarification, Mayor, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Mayor, members of council, as I documented it in the correspondence which I forwarded to all your attention yesterday, Council President Nick Molnar was fired from the City of Greene for screening a video which was profanity-laced and had racial overtones. And although I was very dismayed that a public official would show such a lack of judgment in showing that type of video to public employees in the service department, I am really troubled by the fact that for the last 9 months, he's been lying to the residents of Macedonia as to why he was fired by the City of Greene. So, Mr. Bilkey, as Vice President of City Council, I would ask you to convene a public hearing. I would ask that all the evidence related to Mr. Molnar's firing from the City of Greene be public and discussed by the residents of the city, and that the residents be allowed to determine whether or not he is fit to be on this legislative body. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Plow, before you walk away, I've got a question for you. When you sued the city, you asked Mrs. Hannikin to testify for you in deposition. Is this some sort of quid pro quo by you attacking members of council because she helped you out during your case and you lost it to the city? And I mean, it's most evident too by the fact that there's this Citizen for Macedonia Fiscal Responsibility that you're with her in that group. Are you? Did you help?
Which question would you like to have answered first?
All of them.
Okay. First, with respect to Farnhurst Mayor, I am not sure that I would define losing that case, because the city spent $300,000 of taxpayer money to uphold your personal agenda because you were a private citizen at the time. And what did it get in return? It got the fact that one house will not be built in this city.
Well, that's wildly inaccurate.
And
That's quite inaccurate, but go ahead.
the reality is that the court, if you read Judge Loy's opinion very carefully, you will see that there are many issues, all state issues, that she did not rule upon. So I'm not sure that I would classify spending $300,000 on a lawsuit to prevent me from building a house as a victory, especially when in December of 2013, the city could have settled the case for $60,000 and gotten a better result. So I'm not sure if that is a good thing for the taxpayers. Now, with respect to the second question, I am not here on the quid pro quo. I believe that it's very important that if another city sees that somebody has been fired for improper conduct with racial overtones, and then that individual turns around and threatens the city members, and then lies about it to our residents, I think that's very important. I don't think it has anything to do with quid pro quo.
Mr. Plow, did you watch the video?
Yes, sir.
So what part of the video had racial overtones?
Sir, why don't you ask the City of Greene that put it in the documents I gave to you? I'm quoting
I'm
the
asking
City
you.
of Greene.
I'm asking you that question. What part of the video had racial overtone? Because it had black people in it? Was that that was a racial overtone? Because I watched it and it did not.
What was it called? Biker bait or baiting bikers in the hood?
Yes.
Bait bike in the
that's
hood, I
included,
believe. Yeah,
right?
you sent me the link, yes.
Yes, okay. The City of Greene concluded it had racial overtones.
Again, I'm not interested with this. I'm interested, how did it, to you, was it racially?
As I put in my letter to you, Mr. Bilkey, although I was concerned by the video and what happened there, I was more concerned by the fact that Mr. Bilkey lied to the residents
lie
of
at
the
all.
city. The fact that Mr. Molnar lied to the residents of this city for the past 9 months and berated anybody that questioned him regarding the facts and circumstances of his termination. That's what bothers me. You cannot have a public official standing here and lying to its residents, and when anybody comes up here to disagree with him, for him to berate them. That is wrong. It's morally wrong.
Can I ask you, Mr. Plow, one question?
Sure.
From what I read in From what I read in the Akron Beacon, this is in litigation. As a lawyer, are you used to talking about litigation while it's ongoing?
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that?
According to the Akron Beacon Journal, which is the only thing I know, this is in litigation. As a lawyer, are you used to talking about litigation while it's ongoing?
Ms. Tully, the litigation that Mr. Molnar filed against the city of Green was recently filed. I'm talking about the past 9 months.
No.
litigation
You're
pending.
asking for a public hearing based on the fact that he's in litigation. Why are you talking? I didn't read anything you sent. You know why? It's in litigation. That's not my decision to make. That's in litigation. I guess I would ask our law director, do we talk about litigation out on the
No,
floor?
absolutely not. And I think it's highly ironic at this moment that Mr. Pla had taken the position in the former lawsuit that the interest was not his, and that's why he could represent the plaintiffs as their attorney, and he just admitted that we were really preventing him personally from building a house. So that's a little bit ironic to say the least. And just to be clear, the court did dismiss all the federal claims. There's rife statements throughout the entire opinion and order by Judge Loy that there's just, barely a scintilla of evidence presented, and that's why she dismissed those claims, just to be clear.
To be clear, Mr. Guidetti, what Judge Loy said was she never got to the claims because at the time there was no similarly situated property. She ruled that there was no other lot within Parkview Estates that had been subdivided and on which one new house had been built upon. But of course, Mr. Guidetti, we know now that Lot 58 has been subdivided. We know now that 2 new homes has been built on that lot, 1 on each newly divided lot. So the issue of similarly situated properties might be decided differently if the case was held today.
So you're saying the judge didn't determine that the plaintiffs failed to produce sufficient evidence to support their claims?
I've said that the basis of her opinion was on the fact that the plaintiffs did not produce a similarly situated property, and that was the basis of her opinion.
So you're not going to answer the question?
I did just answer it for you.
You didn't.
My last question is, Ms. Hannigan smiles to people in the crowd. You believe that someone's personal life, which has nothing to do with their performance as a city council member, should be held open to public scrutiny? There are people up here who have lost their jobs or have left their jobs or have worked at places that were in investigation. There's a person who is up here, there were people up here who maybe don't pay their bills. I don't know. Should we put everyone under introspection for their personal life? Because it may impact what they do. I mean, I'm not seeing the correlation, so that's why I guess I'm in question of what relevance does this have for the residents of Macedonia?
Ms. Tully, if you believe that there's no relevance when somebody
No, I
has
asked
been
you,
terminated.
what relevance is there?
I'm responding, Ms. Tully. If you believe that there's no relevance.
Could you get to just the point and not repeat?
I am, Ms. Tully, answering your question, if I may, without being interrupted. If you believe that there's no relevance when a public official is fired for improper conduct based on a video that is profanity laced with racial overtones and then lies about it for 9 months, then ma'am, I'm not here to enlighten
So
you on
you
that
are
issue.
saying that because he was fired, you are stating as a fact he was fired. You were stating as a fact that he was fired because of a racial overtone video.
Ms.
That's
Tully,
why
I
you're stating we
suggest
should
that
then
you
have a
just read
public,
the
no, wait,
materials.
that's why we should have a public hearing. Because if someone asked him, and he's been asked, he said he resigned, but you know for a fact, are you the judge in this, and
No,
jury
ma'am.
in this court case?
That's why I've asked for a public hearing. I think the
It has
residents
no
of this-
relevance.
of this city deserve the chance to view all the evidence for themselves and make their own determination.
Is there anyone out there besides your buddies that
No,
want to see
Ms.
this?
Tully.
I haven't had one resident come and tell me this is an issue.
Ms.
And
Tully,
as you say, it's come up over 9 months from a particular couple people. 9 months. So I haven't had anybody say to me, Jan, and I get a lot of phone calls. I've been on this council for a long time. Why haven't you called me?
I'll be
Before
happy to-
this, 9 months ago, 6 months ago, 4 months ago.
Well, Ms. Scully, the reason I brought it to the attention of council now is because I just recently received the information. Otherwise, I would have brought it to you sooner, but if you recall, I came up here in June of last year, and I asked Mr. Molnar about the facts and circumstances under which he was fired. And at the time, Mr. Molnar denied that there was a video, and he berated me based on the Farnhurst lawsuit. I'm fine with that. He has his opinion. He's welcome to it. And I understand that he has to protect himself. So I'm prepared for the worst, but I'm saying if you wanted to know why, it's because I would never make any allegations or make any requests unless I had the documents and the evidence to back up what I'm asking for. And if you read the documents I sent to you, you would see that.
It's in litigation.
As you wish, ma'am.
I've learned my lesson from our law directors.
Thank
When
you
it's
very
in
much.
litigation, it's handled in executive session.
Thank you very much.
Point of order.
Folks, thank you.
I'll just say this. This ongoing attack is personal, it's political, it's out of hand. I've never said one word to that man outside of the one time he stood at that podium and attacked me. But yet, here I am sitting here being attacked again. I want to be real clear about something. I have pending litigation going on because something happened down there that was incorrect, and I'm going to fight it. That's all I'll say about it. But the one thing that Mr. Pla doesn't tell you is the most important thing. On April 26th of 2016, the city of Greene sent me a letter. And that letter in the first sentence says this. This letter is a rescission of the letter I sent you on April 5th, 2016, the one he references. Let me define rescission for you. Act of rescinding, the cancellation of a contract and the return of the parties to the positions they would have had if the contract had not been made. That's all I'm going to say about it.
And I just need to make one response because Mr. Plow referenced the fact that it was my personal agenda, if you will, in the Parkview subdivision. It needs to be made very, very clear here that I was not mayor at the time. I was the management for Parkview Subdivision Homeowners Association. Mr. Plow was on the board, and Mr. Plow came to the city of Macedonia and asked for a lot split. And the city of Macedonia issued a lot split for a parcel, and the city never came then to the Homeowners Association and asked them to approve it. The lot split went through. A year later, the Homeowners Association finds out about it, and he sits on the board. And the board member said, Mr. Plow, why is it that you had this lot split and you didn't share this with the board? He says, oh, it was such a great finding, I didn't want anybody to know, because he is splitting up a lot. He claims that I had the city spend $300,000, or that the city spent $300,000 on defense. That's true. He sued our homeowners association, by the way, and our homeowners association was without funds. I had to go in and recommend an assessment of every home additional dollars so that we would have enough money to make our ends meet in the association. That was quite unfair. And lastly, I want to say, when he references $60,000, it really was about a $100,000 offer between two insurance companies, the cities and the Parkview Homeowners Association, that was offered to Mr. Plow about a year earlier, against my objection, by the way, because I don't believe that he was deserving of one penny. And I also then made the secondary offer of that I would buy the lot back from him that he bought from the Ferrara estate for $10,000 more than he paid for it. So it would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of about $170,000 that he would have gotten. And he said, basically, I'm not interested. So a year went by. Our attorneys on both sides, for the city and for Parkview Homeowners Association, filed for summary judgment. And Judge Leoy granted summary judgment. Why? Because there was no discrimination. And there was, in fact, Judge Leoy said, what is this zoning matter doing in my court? And further, there was only one council person, or maybe two, that was Rita Darrell and Sylvia Hannikin, that testified for him. And so I think it's a quid pro quo for her testifying in that case that he is now attacking our members of council.
Mayor, only with your permission, if I could just ask one question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I will be happy to address every point that you just made, point by point, at length. cameras rolling if you wish. But I don't think it's fair to the public for you to have the pulpit and not be able to go point by point. So this is a city council meeting, it's not the right forum. I invite you, if you wish to sit down in public with cameras, I'll bring the evidence, you bring the evidence, I'm happy to discuss
I'll
that.
be more than happy to do that. In
I will
fact,
call you tomorrow.
It's
for an
already
appointment,
been
Mayor.
litigated by a judge. There's no need to do that.
okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I need to speak on this issue that you've raised again, because you have said that I testified for Mr. Pla. I was subpoenaed by the process to go to give testimony, not about any knowledge about the actual details of Mr. Pla's case. I was asked to testify on the point of what was said in my presence by the mayor and by a previous council person, Ken Martin, and I so testified accurately and gave the facts that I heard. That's all I did. I did not testify on any other issue. I wasn't asked to testify on any other issue. So it is completely wrong to say that I testified for Mr. Pla. What I did is I responded to a subpoena from the process, and I gave the testimony that about the issue that I was asked, and that's it. Thank you.
Quid pro quo.
Well, you are just repeating yourself, sir, when that is absolutely false. And you know it's false. The problem with this kind of a meeting is that there's all kinds of false statements that were made earlier during this process. And if we're going to waste our time on all this, it's because
Sylvia, if anybody should recognize false statements, it should be you in what you put out to this community.
I did not put out anything false to this community. You have people
Please.
who buy this stuff that you put out there, but I'm just telling you,
Okay.
this is not the forum
I
for that.
indicated before what the circumstances will be if you do that again, so.
Well, you cannot threaten me, sir.
I'm not threatening you.
Yes,
It's a
you
fact.
are.
I'm saying it publicly.
Well,
That if you go out and disseminate information again in this community that is not truthful and it's a lie, I'm going to personally take an action against you. It's not.
you can say what you
It's not a
want.
threat, it's a fact.
You can say what you want. I have not stated anything false to this community, and I will tell you this, I'm not impacted by threats by people like you.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Censored you for it because.
Yeah, okay. Next item on the agenda is,
Wait, do you have any more public comments?
no.
Okay,
Next
Just
item on the
making sure
agenda
we
is.
didn't skip anybody.
I'm sorry?
just making sure there
Okay.
could be good
Any
news out there.
pending and/or new legislation, which is now the first item on the agenda, which is ordinance number 14, 2017.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to offer ordinance number 14, 2017 for its second reading by title only.
An ordinance confirming the appointment by the mayor of Joseph Galati, P.E., of Chagrin Valley Engineering Ltd., as engineer for the city of Macedonia.
Okay, next item on the agenda is ordinance number 15, 2017.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer ordinance 15, 2017 for a second reading by title only.
An ordinance amending chapter 761 of the city of Macedonia's codified ordinances pertaining to peddlers and solicitors.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is ordinance number 16.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer ordinance number 16, 2017 for second reading by title only, please.
An ordinance creating chapter 920 of the city of Macedonia's codified ordinances relative to comprehensive stormwater management.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is ordinance number 17.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer ordinance number 17, 2017 for its second reading by title only.
An ordinance amending chapter 923 of the city of Macedonia's codified ordinances relative to erosion and sediment control.
Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 18.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to offer ordinance number 18, 2017 for its second reading by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Summit Soil and Water Conservation District and the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District for assistance in implementing soil and water conservation measures.
Okay, Next item on the agenda is resolution number 20.
Nope, you skipped
No,
one.
number
I'm sorry,
19.
19. I jumped.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer ordinance number 19, 2017 for its first reading by title only, please.
An ordinance adopting annual appropriations for salaries and wages and other expenses of the city of Macedonia for the period of January 1, 2017 to December 31st, 2017.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer resolution number 20, 2017, for its first, second, and third reading by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion is carried.
A resolution confirming the reappointment by the mayor of Stacy Suji to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
You've heard the reading.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post resolution number 20, 2017, and post the same as law.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion's carried. Any other motions or legislative actions to be taken up at this time? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to correspondence.
I have none, Your Honor.
No correspondence. Mayor's report. I'm going to be very short and just, again, indicate that we're going to be on the ballot for a 0.5% increase in May. A quarter of that half will have an applied refund for residents. So if you're a resident in the city of Macedonia and you are paying 2% currently, today you will pay 2% in the future because you will be able to apply for that refund. The city is in a deep crisis, folks, and I said this at the last meeting and I'm saying it again today. We should have been taking a position probably in 2014 and 15 when the state auditor was in and made those recommendations to us. It could see that our funding sources, revenue, was not up to the expenses that the city had. We have $20 million in roads, and I'll say it again, I sound like a Polly Parrot in repeating all this, but I need to continue to say this in each and every meeting. But we have $20 million of roads that we need to do immediately. We have $7 million that follow in the next 5 years. Our 5-year plan, which is, by the way, posted on our website, shows that we have an overall need of about $41 million. Our general fund this past year came in at about $1.5 million carryover from 2016 to 17. We had 0 capital improvement dollars in 2016, and in 2017 we currently have $140,000. And I can tell you with $140,000 you can't do very much in a city of our size. We have a lot of other issues that parallel the roads when we start talking about security of property and person. And I mean that by the fact that we have large shopping centers, the fact that we need to do better, or I should say better policing, because I think we do good policing, but we certainly could use more men on the road at times. And that's something else that we need to strongly look at. You know, we put a school resource officer in at the high school this year and to visit other schools as well. That's worked out very well last year. And those are the types of things that we need to continue to do. But we can't do it if we don't have any money, folks. You know, when the state local government fund was cut by over $500,000 by the governor to our community, and our income tax collection came in at $275,000 less than it was last year, it makes it very difficult to operate the city. When I think about the police department that needs 10 new cruisers, we need 10 new cruisers. You know, it's costed a lot of money to buy cruisers, as you can imagine. We have Gradall that's $300,000 just for one piece of equipment. Back in 2014 when I took office, I'm sorry, 2014. 2015 when I came back from being away since 2001, we had 14 employees in the administration. I came back in 2015 and we still had 14 in the administration. Now, yes, did police grow a little bit and so did fire grow a little bit, but service went from over 20 employees down to 15. So think about when you put a crew out to do your road repair. The other day I was watching, they did an excellent job, by the way, on the Commons. They had to have a flagman up front, they had to have a guy driving the truck, that's 2 guys, a guy shoveling, a guy behind him with another truck. So look at how many guys it takes just to do that type of patching on main goes. You can't do it any other way. And you have 3 mechanics down at the garage. So 3 mechanics are working down there. So take that out of the scenario. And then you have 1 sign shop guy working. What does that leave us? And so that people want to know, how come my leaves weren't picked up in time? I don't have enough men. We need more men. The city is grown. Our street mileage has grown. We have more lane miles now than we've ever had before. And we need to get on top of this. I continue to say that we rob Peter to pay Paul in this city. I wish there was a Peter because I can't pay Paul. But we need to find the money. I just don't know where to find the money. And I've done everything that I possibly can do as an administrator to cut the budget, save money in every aspect that we possibly can. And I tell you folks, I can only again tell you I'll take you to water. I can't make you drink it. But it's a serious matter for this city, because if it doesn't start to get some infusion of dollars in there so we can start taking care of things, we're going to wind up like communities that you don't want to be like. And I tell you that in a very serious way, and I'm preaching this to you. I just hope that everybody hears what I'm saying. Additionally, I had a resident, after we filed or put up the 5-year plan, in there was a cost of $600,000 to put a roundabout at Valley View and Highland Road. Now, you need to know, to put a intersection, full turning lanes and everything at that intersection, it's going to cost $700,000. $700,000 to put in traffic lights, turning lanes, a full control intersection. So wouldn't it be more reasonable to spend $600,000, put in a roundabout, no traffic lights, and no maintenance? Now, what should I spend, folks? Should I spend the $600,000 with the roundabout, which is going to give us an aesthetic value there, plus it's going to handle the traffic? Or should I spend $700,000, which we don't have, by the way, to put in a full controlled intersection there? So, you know, those are the kinds of questions that come up from residents. You know, why are you spending $600,000 on a roundabout? Well, because I don't want to spend $700,000 the other way. So those mere small little things like that get out in the community and look like we're doing something wrong. And we're not doing anything wrong. We're being very fiscally responsible. There's no raises for any employees this year. I have to say that again, because we have no money. And it's a double-edged sword when I stand here and I tell you that we have no money. Because good people that have been moving into this community have started to question themselves, why did I move to Macedonia? Their government doesn't support the people. The people don't support their government, and some government people don't tell the truth. So why should I stay in this community? So I can only give you the facts, and the facts are on our website, and the numbers don't lie. And we have a CPA as a finance director for the first time in the city's history, that we have somebody that has the ability and knowledge and understanding to present the numbers factually. The city was in a crisis situation in 14 and 15. And there was spending going on as if there was money beyond money. I mean, why in 15 did they spend $2.5 million on roads and depleted every single capital improvement dollar that we have? Why didn't we go out and bond and do something in our streets where we could have gotten a bigger bang for it? You know, it just doesn't make sense. And now we are scurrying around here trying to figure out, what do we do? It's very, very serious, and I can't express it any more than that. Now I'm going to move on. I have one last item here, and this goes to the Redevelopment and Future Growth Committee update. I need to, first of all, tell you that the Future Growth Committee was put together back in 1997. And what their whole premise is to make recommendation to the city as to how they wanted to see our town develop. You know, looking at our different zoning in our downtown area, and where do we want to see green space, and where do we want to see redevelopment. It was merely a guide. It wasn't that we're spending money, but it's a guide to be followed for the future. You have to have some direction. Unfortunately, if we didn't have this guide, we'd be criticized for not having a plan. So this plan, and I have to thank each and every one of the board members that gave of their time in making the recommendations, which now council has in their possession. So I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Kevin Westbrook, who's the chairman. I'm going to call on Kevin in a second. Jessica Brandt, who was the secretary. Sonia Becker, I don't think Sonia's here. Kevin Bilkey, a councilman that was on there. Chris Copelands. We had Bundle Del Ripple. Al Kalish back there. Roy Metzel. And Emily Quesada. And I just want to thank you for taking the time, because you, I believe, were the third group that came together to make recommendations. And I think that we need to have not just you making this presentation to council today by giving it to them, but I think we need to come back at a future date and actually have some sort of Q&A series here on what it is that you guys did after council has a time to digest it. So at this time, I'm going to call on Kevin Westbrook. Kevin? By the way, Kevin is also our planning commission director as well, or chairman rather.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think at council, everybody got this, the report that we put together. This group, our group formed in, I think it was May of 2015. We've been meeting pretty much every month since then up through December to put this together. I think our group started out with maybe 20 or so people. Within a couple of meetings, we got down to 9, and all 9 of us stuck with it through the whole thing. We spent the first few meetings kind of looking at direction. Then we started interviewing department heads. Sat down with each of the department heads. It was really enlightening for a lot of us to hear some of the inner workings of these departments, understand what their needs were, and the short term, and then some of their wants in the long term. After gathering a lot of that information, we kind of started trying to moving into beyond just what the city needs to maintain. What kind of things do we want? What are the things that make people want to stay here? What are the things that make the city attractive to people from the outside? And I'm not going to go through all the things, but there's basically a chapter dedicated to each one of these things. There's beautification we spent a good bit of time on, from gateways, public art, all kinds of things, green space. There's a lot of things discussed in there. Talked about city branding. The city's slogan is the crossroads of Northeast Ohio. Is it time to maybe think about that? Is that still the best slogan? Maybe it is. If it is, maybe we need to do something more with it. We need to come up with a logo that matches that. If you go to some other cities, maybe it's Solon, or we show some North Olmsted things, or Shaker Heights, they've got signs that embrace that their motto and their logo. And maybe it is still the Crossroads Northeast Ohio. Maybe it's time to think of something different. One of the bigger sections that we talk about in there is the city center. I think everybody was kind of intrigued with that. If you think about Macedonia, there's not truly a downtown city center that you would think of. You've got the Commons, you've got this area over here, but nothing says this is the middle of Macedonia, this is the heart of the city. So we spent some time thinking, what would that be? And we kind of were leaning towards maybe it's the triangle of land right outside here that's Valley View, 82, and Park Avenue.
where the old Macedonia school used to be. You know, the biggest piece of that is vacant right now. There's an opportunity. So we looked, there's a lot of discussion in on that of what could be done there, just some ideas that we had. Probably one of the biggest things that we thought should come out of that is probably a separate committee to look at that. You know, nothing where you have to necessarily spend any money. Put another committee of residents together, brainstorm. There's a lot of good residents out there that would have some great ideas, I think. And maybe someday a developer will walk in and be interested in putting some money into something like that. I'm trying to think, you know, we kind of wrapped up with some not so exciting stuff at stormwater, roads, sidewalks. I think we all agreed that, you know, sidewalks and making the city more walkable is something that would be really great. A few years ago when South Bedford, the sidewalk was put in down South Bedford, I think mainly for school access. But I mean, you drive down there on a nice day, it's full of families. It's people pushing strollers, it's kids on bikes, it's lots of activity. I think if you had some of that, you know, in other places besides just the neighborhoods, some of the bigger streets, you know, you'd get more people out. But you know, those are a lot of the things that we kind of have into this report. I think that, you know, we hope that the council and the mayor, you guys will all take a look at this. Maybe you will agree, maybe you won't agree with some of the ideas. Maybe it'll spark some interest to maybe put a committee together to dig into beautification more. You know, or we talked about community park. Maybe put, you know, maybe something the recreation board could look at, or maybe it'll at least spark some ideas of your own that you can put out there. So that's kind of our basic summary. I want to thank the committee for meeting every month. I want to especially thank Jessica Brandt. She put in a lot of work. For every hour that we met, she probably put in 3 to 4 at least on her own. And lately it was probably even more than that, putting the report together itself, keeping on us to make sure we all did our part. But yeah, we couldn't have done this without her. But that's pretty much it, and hopefully you can all take a look at it.
Kevin, thank you so much, and I want to thank the entire committee for coming out tonight. But we certainly, after council gets an opportunity to digest this, we'd certainly like for you guys to come back and we'll spend maybe a half hour or so with questions and answer periods, so that we can kind of flush out some of the things that are in here that, you know, are good ideas, and it's a guide, and it's not necessarily, because I want to make sure that somebody doesn't misconstrue what it is that you guys are recommending, but it gives us, the city, some sort of guideline. And I can tell you that when we, after that 97 study, we started moving in that direction of buying up properties in and around City Hall. That was the whole idea, to buy up these homes on Park Avenue, then to ultimately get towards 82 and then create green space out that way. Those are the kinds of ideas that, by creating a center or a roundabout in that area and green space and things of that nature, would certainly enhance and create a downtown atmosphere, some synergy, if you will, to our town. I think a lot of communities, you know, lack that. I mean, you know, you go to a community like Solon and they don't have a downtown area, but you go to a place like Chagrin Falls and they have a beautiful downtown area. You go to Medina, they got a beautiful downtown area. You go to our neighboring community of Hudson, and they have a beautiful downtown area. And those are the things that we kind of lack here, of having that synergy in the downtown area. And that's why this building, when it was built, it was kind of skewed in a way to look out towards 82 and towards 82 and Valley View in somewhat that direction. So we knew that one day that was the plan, to push ourselves out there. So I thank you again for coming back and reconfirming a lot of what was done in the last 2 redevelopment reviews, but we'd certainly like to have you come back, and I'm sure that council will have questions for you. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could we, instead of having a half hour before a meeting, could we have a separate meeting that we basically, so we can hear, you know, when you read, you don't always get the passion. You don't always get the thoughts behind it. And there's a lot of passion, a lot of effort that was done by this committee so that we can ask our questions and they can also explain why they may have gone that way. And that also would then give the general public an ability to be here in attendance to and listen to the plans for the future.
I would ask the committee then to, knowing that we have 2 meetings a month here, we would either do it before the meeting, maybe instead of our meeting, we do it at 6:30 and gives an opportunity to make that presentation. So you guys get together, see when you all can make it back, and then we'll plan it and we'll put it on our agenda. So thank you. Okay, we're kind of moving right through this meeting today. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
As the finance chair, I want to say that we have had 3 meetings. We went through 2 meetings, which was the operating budget, as the mayor stated. There are no raises within the operating budget. There are no additional personnel within the operating budget. And, you know, the personnel that you've seen hired in the fire department is a result of our regionalization. The last meeting started to concentrate on the capital. I will reinforce what the mayor had said. The capital, there is one project for Sioux Culvert that will be paid for by Macedonia and then reimbursed by NEOSRD. So that's $210,000. We then talked about transferring $200,000 from the general fund. What does that do? Minimal road work, minimal crack sealing, and mandatory EPA. So when we get all said and done, and our big balance of $140,000 from last year, when we start to listen to the department heads now, what do we have left? We have 71,000. That's only 3 zeros after that number to talk about capital. With the chief talking about purchasing cars, he's looking at an innovative way of leasing and trading in. And what could that do? And doing a 4-year lease. So that's what the things we're looking at. We also talked about the fact that the benefits, there was a projection that the benefits were going to increase by 21% due to the hard work of the committee as well as our HR director. It's nowhere near that. We moved out of the county plan. The other thing I want to talk about the fact is there's a lot of requests in here, but as you hear of 70,000, so there are 2 funds that people talk about. One is the Emergency Reserve Fund. That is $500,000. Council has the ability to move money out of there to use for projects. But if you think in your own household, if you have an emergency fund, do you do that just to upgrade to a new car? Or are you keeping it for an emergency? And then the other thing is we will have an estimated $800,000 carryover at the end of this year. I can't remember the last time we were under $1 million. If you use any of that money, you reduce your carryover for the end of the year, meaning you have no extra money for any emergency operating expenses. So we, as a council, have to very judiciously look at the dollar amounts that we have available versus what we need. But if you look at the 5-year plan for the first 5 years, there's barely any request by the for the capital by the department heads because they know there isn't any money. One of the requests was, could we use the money out of the water maintenance fund? And so we have been told there was 500,000 something in there. There is not. There's 400,000. And Mark, do you want to talk about what we are allowed? Because I asked the law department, when you specifically identify money, such as we have a union that we have uniforms. You can't put that money anywhere else because it's contractually negotiated. similar with this water M&E fund. So I asked Mark for a legal opinion since council had asked, can I take some of that money and use that for different things within the city? So
Yeah, so obviously we have the water M&E ordinance that we've amended throughout the years. And the most recent version does state that the money can be used for the operation, maintenance, repair, management, enlargement of and replacement to the municipal water system, which is not the obligation of the city of Cleveland. So obviously there's going to be some impact once we finalize the documentation with the restated water service agreement with the city, which we're still waiting to hear back from the city of Cleveland Law Department on. But currently that's what the expenditures can be made for.
And so, based on that last paragraph that he added, we really don't have the money to spend until we see what the Cleveland water system is going to require from us. And the last comment I'll make is about the roads. I got an email today. It was a one-liner. It was from a resident that West Highland on South Bedford was sinking. What are you going to do to fix it? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other committee reports?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the Parks and Rec will be meeting on March 1st at 6. It's not on this list here. I think it is on the computer, right, Josephine?
I didn't know you were meeting.
We are meeting Wednesday, March 1st.
Okay.
If I know it, it's on
Any others? Okay, hearing none. Department reports. John? Oh. Well, I'll get you, John. Okay.
Sure.
That John. I'm going to that John first, John, and then we'll catch you at the end.
Best
Okay?
for last. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Our parks personnel has completed street tree trimming in Newport, Elizabeth, and Crestline area, and also on the street of Wren. They are now going to settle back and start getting some of their equipment prepared for the spring for mowing, and also some housekeeping items that they have not been able to attend to since they've been out of the parks this whole time doing the trimming for us. Our pothole patching is still going on. We are aware of the section, Jan, over by South Bedford and Highland. We are going to be addressing that with hot mix once the plants open back up. Don't want to put cold patch in there because it's only temporary. But so far, they've put down an additional 5 ton of asphalt on Highland Road, Shepherd Road, Ledge Road, North Bedford, and all of the Crow area have been completed. Holes keep popping up, so please keep reporting as you see them. Let us know, and we get out there as soon as we can to address them. And also, lastly, I just want to say one thing: our 4 part-time employees that we have working in the service department, who only work 29 hours a week, went out, tested, and received their Class B CDLs. Now this means we'll be able to use them to help us drive our commercial vehicles in plow season if needed, and also for our jobs throughout the year to help drive our trucks. They did a fantastic job. They studied hard. I was very pleased to see them all pass, and looking forward to keeping them in the workforce. That's all I have.
Thank you, John. Joe?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks to the council for having the work session here this evening to discuss stormwater and our stormwater ordinances. Otherwise, I don't have any new news to report, no further report tonight.
Okay, thank you. Angela?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to encourage everybody once again to find us on Facebook to keep updated on upcoming programs and events, cancellations, things of those nature. We have quite a few programs coming up with spring and summer lurking around the corner. Youth dodgeball, we have a Tiny Tykes arts and crafts program for 3 to 5-year-olds, spring youth soccer, we've got Red Cross lifeguard training courses coming up, spring break camp for the children who are not in school during spring break. Well, none of them are in school, but for those who need something to do while they're on spring break. And then our annual aquatic Easter egg hunt, which is scheduled for April 1st. So these are also, all the information is found in the upcoming March City Messenger. So if you don't get that, you can sign up to receive that, an electronic version of that in your email. Or you can go to our Facebook page or our website, macrec.com, and keep updated on all of our latest program offerings. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda?
Thank you. I wanted to inform everybody that our February RETA payments that we received for the month of February was $855,858. That's compared to 2016's revenue of $809,391. That puts us up about $46,467, or $75,395 for the year. It's good news, but still not enough. Just to keep in mind, when we put the budget together for 2017, we only increased the budget by 4% over 2016's numbers, 16's actual numbers. So to give you some perspective, in 2015, the general fund budget was increased by 20.52% over 2014's actual spending. The actual spending for the general fund came in at 12.25% higher than the 2014 spending. Our budget for 2016 was reduced by 4.69%, or a negative 4.69%, and our actual spending for 2016 was reduced by 13.09% over 2015 spending. So we increased the budget for 2017 so far, depending upon what happens with capital items, by 4.07%. That's not a huge increase. That doesn't give a lot of cushion if unexpected items come up, throughout the year. I also wanted to mention that in the February Messenger, the newsletter that we sort of put out, I gave a description of, on the May's ballot coming up, we have a 0.5% increase in the income tax going to the ballot. I gave a description of, if this passes, the city residents will receive a 0.25% credit if you apply for it. It gives you all the detail of the 0.5% increase and what will happen as a resident if you would like to get that 0.25% that you pay to Rita. If you'd like to get that back, how to apply for it. If you didn't receive it or didn't read it and you would like to, please email me and I will certainly get you a copy. The last thing I wanted to mention is in the past newsletter, there was an article about how the city police department is seeking to spend an additional $350,000. It's true. I mean, to some respect, I think it's about $320,000. But the reason is, in 2016, council passed the replacement positions, or replacement hiring of police officers, which then has caused an increase in our salaries for 2017, because when some of these individuals were actually hired, it was later in the year and they didn't get paid for a full year. So that's part of it. Almost $100,000 is for that. Then you have part-time jail correction officers, thank you, that were also hired on a part-time basis. So that was also approved by council. Then we have an increase of overtime of about $15,000, which is required because the state is requiring additional training of the police officers, and there's nothing that we can do with that. We do get reimbursed from the state for some of it, but it won't cover all of it. And then probably the biggest portion, and I had informed council of this last year, there is a police levy fund that the city has that has to be used specifically for police pension. There was enough money in there last year where I used additional dollars out of there and reduced the spending in the general fund to cover the police pension for 2016, knowing that in 2017 I was going to have to go back to the general fund to cover additional dollars. So that's an additional reason why the police department is going up. And then the hospitalization costs, that's all part of the department. So it ended up being about, I think it's $320,000 in total. And that's the budget. It's not what's actually spent yet, that's the budget. So that's my report.
Thank you, Rhonda. That was much clearer. I'm sure that people understood that. Tim?
Yes, Mayor. With the nice weather, I'd like to remind everyone that it is illegal to burn yard waste. We get numerous calls for residents piling up their yard waste and burning it as against EPA state regulations. In the upcoming messenger, I put a lot of the guidelines in there, plus some links to go to what you are allowed to do with outside fire pits fireplaces and burning of clean firewood outside for ceremonial fires. But it is illegal to burn yard waste in the state, in Macedonia and the state of Ohio, unless you have specific permission from the EPA.
But if they obviously have it within a contained area and they're burning logs and stuff like that.
It's got to be
throw some leaves
clean,
in there, that's
dried
okay.
firewood,
Yeah.
okay? It can be 2 foot by 2 foot, okay? And it can't be no higher than 2 foot. So it's got to be a ceremonial fire. It can't be, I'm burning yard waste, I'm burning garbage.
What if they're
burning
roasting a
tires.
pig?
Pardon? Not with garbage, no. So, yeah, no, it cannot be that. So look to our messengers coming out, and it'll give you guidelines there. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. John?
No report, Mayor.
All right. Oh, Mark?
No report, sir.
John? Hey, John, make sure you speak up into the mic.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council and department heads. Glad to be here. I've got to catch up on the Longwood Manor. This is a report on the Longwood Manor Committee. We had a meeting, myself and the Vice President of Longwood Manor Historical with the mayor about 3 weeks ago. So we've made some progress there. I want to say one thing. We also have a website, Longwood Manor Historical Society has a website. It's www.longwoodmanor.org. We're going to be spending time this year ourselves. We have members, including myself, who's we're going to do some more web development. We'll have, since we're going to be opening sometime this year for activities, we'll have activities posted. We'll have place for membership and for people to give donations and/or become a member. So just check out that website now. We got pictures out there too. www.longwoodmanor.org. Now, we had a meeting 3 weeks ago. As I understand, I've talked with the service manager on some of the stuff they've been doing. We know we have to finish the electric on the first floor. That's basically reactivating the existing wiring in the first floor, the dining room, the kitchen, and then pantry room. The city wanted posted exit signs, which I believe have been bought, and those will be installed also at the time they're doing the electric upgrade, which I guess is after they finish their current project, whenever. I know we're not the priority here, but we're coming. And I think they're going to check out the hot water heater tomorrow. That's still on? Okay. That's the, I hope that works. That way we can have hot water in the restrooms.
Right.
We talked about installing panic bars on the back doors. Yeah, that will have to be the two back doors and maybe the pantry door. The door in the front of the manor is the original wood door. I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything with that. But the whole emphasis is to make the house safe. There's a space on the concrete pad on the back of the house, which could be designated as a handicap spot. It should be, well, no, I don't know the exact, we're not sure the exact specs, but it should be large enough to accommodate one, like a van with a wheelchair lift on it. So we'd have the one handicap spot. We could paint that off as a handicap spot. So we're hoping that, I'm personally hoping by the time we have the Spirit of Macedonia Festival.
No fun
this
fest.
year, huh? Is it still called Spirit of Macedonia Festival?
Once again.
Fun Fest? It's called, oh,
That's the
okay.
front of the room.
No, 1 year it used to be the Spirit of Macedonia. I was mentioning that. That'd be, I hope we can have some activities by then. That was a statement of the first mayor of Macedonia. There's a new spirit in Macedonia. So that would be a good kickoff. So we're making progress.
Mr. Kazmir, can I ask you one question before you leave? Have we given consideration, or is that building ADA compliant? Because I know that's an important piece to this.
Partially.
partially?
It's partially, I mean,
I can't.
yeah, we have some lips where there shouldn't be some, but we have a ramp in the, when I say lips coming into doorways, thresholds. But we have the ramp that when we put the bathrooms in many years ago, there was a ramp into the garage, which is where the bathrooms are, that you can get a wheelchair up and into the house. So yes, it's partially, the bathrooms are ADA, but
Oh, definitely.
you know,
Yeah.
it's,
The new bathroom.
there are some historical exceptions when you have a building of this age that you don't have to meet all of those.
Thank you.
The first floor is the floor we're gonna open, Mr. Molnar, too. So basically, most of the entrance is through the back of the house. So that's where there's a concrete pad for handicapped, there's the ramps, and then out in the first floor area, that's pretty accessible. The doorways are pretty wide. That's as far as I know about it.
You know, a lot of people think that the back of the house is the actual front of the house, or
Yeah.
where the bathrooms are is the front of the house, but it really is the back of the house, as you're indicating, and.
Maybe someday we'll get all the
Yeah.
brush cleared, and people can see the front of the house too, all the way around. We got the fence down, so they could walk around, but the outside of the house, it's not really, I wouldn't call it handicapped accessible right now to get around to the front of the house. We'd need some sidewalks or something like that. So, but the whole concern is safety, so that the fire department, I guess, can inspect it and say we can start having activities, and then we have to talk about supervision, you know, who's gonna be there. We have Longwood Manor members, of course, who'd like to, you know, participate. We're doing as much as we can too, as far as work on the house. And so we're doing more fundraisers this year, trying to raise money for specific type projects to help out. But, you know, we thank the city, we thank the whole council. I mean, you guys have consistently voted for the Longwood Manor on all the resolutions that we've had, at least since I've been president, Longwood Manor. You even overrode the veto on the previous mayors when he vetoed the extension on working on the house. So, you know, we're all aware of that. We thank you, thank the mayor, and thank the service department.
John, thank you for your time and effort in working on the Longwood Manor. I've always said that, you know, here we had our mayor who was here for quite a few years as our mayor. He died at 104, and he left a legacy of about 300 and some acres to the city. And one of the most cherished things that he loved was his home. And while I know it is a money pit, we certainly, though, have to recognize that he left such a jewel to the city, and that's the 300-plus acres. So if there was anything that we did to recognize him, would be to keep his home and keep it alive and make it useful. So thank you. Thank you, and the committee as well. Is there any other unfinished business? New business?
One quick thing, Mayor, I noticed today, and I want to remind everyone, and I hate to be redundant, but I think it's a good thing. We have an e-commerce safety zone out in the parking lot. If you come off of Valley View Road, you pull in, there's 2 signs that you can pull in within. It's a place where you can do any type of Facebook transactions or whatever you may do, however you may do it. It's a place where you can feel a little bit safe about it. I happened to pull in today, and someone was selling a car over there, so it kind of made me feel good to know that it's actually being used. So keep that in mind if you utilize those types of things.
Thank you. Any other new business? Hearing none. All those in favor by adjourning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
I got yelled at.